Namaste, dear learners. My name is Dr. Anita Priyadarshini. I'm working at the Staff Training and Research Institute of Distance Education at the Indira Gandhi National Open University. This session is about the Masters in Distance Education program, and we are going to talk to you about the Educational Communication Technologies, which is part of the course MDE 518. Our session today is on Media and Technology of Communication. In this session, I will be dealing with a few areas, and the learning outcomes for these areas are as follows. Firstly, we will try to revisit the philosophy of distance education. Then we will go on to classify media according to the definitions and understanding of different scholars. After that, we will list what are the various attributes of educational media. And finally, we will try to see how print, which is the master medium of distance education, as well as non-print, which is the electronic media, how is it that they are used in distance education, and what are their merits and what are their limitations. So, coming to the first topic, which is that of distance education. Since this program is about distance education and this course is on educational technologies, it is important to understand how it is related to distance education and what is distance education. Distance education has been defined by different scholars in different ways. As you probably know and you have seen in your other courses of this program, that distance education has grown and continues to be very, very relevant in present times. In fact, in the last 1 year, which is during the pandemic, it is distance education and it is online learning and it is educational technologies which have really taken over the entire educational scenario. Whether it is formal education, face-to-face education, or rather what used to be face-to-face education, we find the use of online learning throughout the past 1 year, and it will continue in the same way now also. When we look at distance education, I would like to quote the definition given by Michael Moore in 1973. And Michael Moore said that distance education is about instructional methods in which teaching behaviors are performed apart from learning behaviors, so that communication between the teacher and the learner is facilitated by print, electronic, and mechanical and other devices. The other very, very eminent scholar is Otto Peters from Germany, who in 1973 spoke about distance education being an industrialized form of teaching and learning. And he said that it was a method of imparting knowledge and skills and attitudes which is rationalized by the application of division of labor and organizational principles, as well as extensive use of technical media, especially for the purpose of reproducing quality teaching learning materials. So here again you will see that the emphasis is on media, and which is why this course is extremely relevant for you. Similarly, we had Wedmer, who spoke about the various forms of teaching learning arrangements in which teachers and learners carry out essential tasks and responsibilities apart from one another, communicating in a variety of ways. Here again, I would like to point out that communicating because of the distance, over distance, the distance between teachers and learners is emphasized by Wedmer. Similarly, Hilary Perrotin spoke about the fact that teaching is conducted by persons who are removed in space and time from the learner. These definitions will help you get the context of educational media. As again, I revisit the characteristics of distance education, where we say that the learners and the teachers are at a distance from each other, physical distance from each other. And therefore, the need for instruction and this instruction must be two-way. That is, there must be communication between the teacher and the learner and the counselor and the tutor. And the delivery system, as you all probably know, is through various media, whether it is print, electronic media, television, radio, web-based learning, online learning, and so on. And it is done through a professional agency which is responsible for these programs and is certified by that professional agencies. When we talk about educational communication and we are talking about distance education, it is important to remember Michael Moore's theory of transactional distance, in which there are three variables, which is dialogue, that is talking to each other, there is a structure, and the fact that the learner is autonomous. And it is these three variables which either increase the distance or decrease the distance. You may like to read about this theory of transactional distance separately. Similarly, we must know about the theory of propounded by Malcolm Knowles, which is on self-directed learning. And this theory, which is the basis for the theory of andragogy, is the art of helping adults learn, as against pedagogy, which is the art of learning of how children learn. And in all this, one must not forget Homburg, who spoke about guided didactic conversation, which is that learners and teachers are actually having a conversation with each other, whether it is through print or whether it is through any other kind of media. The personalized conversation forms a very, very important part of any kind of learning in distance education. Having said that, let us now come back to our main topic, which is that of educational communication. And educational communication is what takes place in a very vibrant distance learning context. And this educational communication refers to the process of how teachers and how students act and interact to enhance knowledge. As you will recall in your previous sessions, we had spoken about the fact that there is a sender who sends a message, there is a receiver who receives the message, and there is a channel through which this message is sent. And that is how communication takes place. And this communication may be concerned with content, it could be skill development, it could be teaching attitudes, values, related activities, and it is this that forms the basis of education, whether it is information, training, enlightening, or even entertaining. It is this basic fundamental that forms the basis of communication. When we come to teaching strategies, we are talking about demonstrations, tutorials, textbooks, course materials, and assignments to evaluate, as well as that of audio-visual components, and you have libraries which help and which form the medium by which knowledge is transferred from the sender to the receiver, from the teacher to the learner. And educational media forms the carriers by which this educational information and instructional material is carried over a distance between the institution and the learners, the teachers and the learners. Let us now move forward to communicational media. When we talk about communicational media in the context of distance education, we are talking also about educational communicational media. And that has been classified in different ways. According to some scholars, this classification is simply between print, that is printed materials, as well as non-print, which is electronic materials. According to some other scholars, this can be on the basis of how data is classified, which is it could be analog or it could be digital. So you will see that depending on the requirement, depending on the need, there is different classification which takes place. There are different scholars who have classified media. And when we look at it, we see that Romizovsky's classification of educational media is very well standardized and it is very well accepted. According to Romizovsky, the classification of media depends on how the sensory channels receive it. And as you know, there are sensory channels include hearing, visual, audiovisual, tactiles. And if you look at each of them, these are illustrated by different types of media. For instance, when in a class or in a session as this one is taking place, when the teacher speaks, it is the teacher's voice, it is the teacher's language. It is also possible that you as a learner in your own time and space are hearing audio tapes or you are hearing radio broadcasts. As you know, the IGNOU has a very vibrant Gyanvani which takes place, and audio radio broadcasts are given from time to time. And therefore, those are being heard through the sensory channel of your hearing. And similarly, you have visuals. According to scholars, visuals include pictures, charts, models, which are part of your learning. You will see that in the learning materials which are given to you by IGNOU, there are pictures that are there are diagrams, there are graphs. These are all learning takes place through a visual mode. There could also be slides, film shows, transparencies, or any kind of other visual medium through which learning takes place. The audio-visual is also an important part of this classification of educational media, where television, which is both audio as well as visual, where you have channels such as YouTube, Facebook, and so on, where these mediums are being used. And the last one is working models, where you have tactile channels through which simulated devices and learning is taking place. In subjects which include project work or which include any kind of hands-on requirements or practicals or laboratory work, these kind of working models or simulated devices form a very important part of educational media. Besides this, there are other scholars also who have defined educational media. For instance, Scrum has defined it as a two-tier classification, which is of big media and small media, where the media is being able to cover a lot of masses like television, like other kind of technologies like computers, like interactive radio and so on. These are all examples of big media. But smaller things like slides, like small videos come in the category of small media. In addition to this, you have Brecht's taxonomy of educational media. And here you will find that the definition is based upon how communication takes place. In fact, Brecht has divided educational media into 7 classes. Let us now see these 7 classes and take them up one by one. The 7 classes, in the first class, Brecht has spoken about audio, motion, visual media. And as you can see, the second one is on audio-visual still media, still visual media. The difference is between motion and still. And then there is yet another class which is semi-motion media. And the fourth one which is on motion visual media. Fifth one which is on still visual media. And then audio media. And the last one, which is the 7th one, which is on print media. In short, what we are trying to say is that there are different classifications of educational media, but the underlying purpose of all these educational media is basically to transfer knowledge, to communicate through senders and through receivers using this media as a channel. In the case of education, all these medias are used to reduce the distance between the teacher, the physical distance between the teacher and the learner. I would also like to add that classification of media also depends upon interactive and non-interactive media. And here you see that in this educational media, you will find printed media, which is in the form of self-learning materials, audios, video tapes, and 3D models, as well as integrated models. When we talk of print, as I said, it includes your textbooks, your course materials. In audios, it is audio tapes, it is radio phone-in programs. When we're talking of videos, it is videos, interactive television, and so on. 3D models, as was said in the earlier classification, they could be simulated models, they could be physical objects, you could be doing a home project where you are making a 3D model as a part of your practical work. And in terms of integrated media refers to that which includes all the various components, whether it is audio, visual, or any kind of movement, still, and so on. And this includes computer-based media. It also includes the internet, the World Wide Web, video, text, and so on. In the case of distance education, we would like to now talk about the most important media, which despite the growth of technologies still remains as the master media. And what is that media? That media is the print media. At the end of the day, learners sometimes feel more comfortable with a book in their hands, with a course material in their hands. And therefore, printed course materials continue to be a very important and basic part of the course materials of a distance learning institution. And all open universities in India use print material as their master medium. There are, of course, limitations of printed media. You will find that many times you may not be able to read a book because maybe you are in a place where you are moving or you are walking. So in that case, that is a limitation of print material. Or there could also be a reason where sometimes some learners, their learning styles are different. Some learners learn better when they are seeing, some learners learn better when they are hearing, and therefore different types of media are useful. And in that case, print would be useful to some, but audio tapes or learning through computers or learning through television would be more suitable for others. Therefore, it is considered that print media does have its limitations, where reading printed material might be more time consuming, or it may, and in some cases also it is felt that print is not really suitable when you have skill development to take place. And therefore, it is considered that another media should be used when we are doing practicals or you are teaching practicals or hands-on kind of work. In addition to that, it is also not very useful when we are talking with people with different abilities. But having said that, print has very many merits also. And because print is a permanent structure, permanent in the sense that you can keep it, you can use it when you have time, you can pick it up, and you get a feel that you are reading it. And therefore, for many learners, better processing takes place. And similarly, you are able to interact with them. Each learner is able to do it in their own unique manner. Print is also considered better for understanding. Of course, again, for learners who need to learn through print. And it is very easy to move around, carry your book. Maybe if you're traveling from one place to the other or you're on a bus, you can pick up your book and use that time usefully to read it. And you are not dependent on connectivity, or you're not dependent on whether the Wi-Fi is working or not. If you have your course material in hand, you can read better from it. It is extremely useful for so many things. Therefore, print continues to be used by all open universities and distance education institutions in a large way. Let us now look at the non-print media. As I said earlier, in recent times, especially in the past 1 year, it is non-print media in the form of electronic media which has been the driving force by which teaching has been taking place. In COVID times, it has been the savior of teaching learning, where all teaching learning has taken place through electronic media, whether it is the radio or the television, or whether it is online learning or iPods or video tapes or cable TV also. these are the ones which have been at the forefront of teaching learning during the pandemic. In IGNOU, we have had Facebook sessions, YouTubes, personalized learning which has been taking place through these kind of things. In addition to this, non-print media also includes 3D models, integrated media, demonstration kits, and home experimental kits that take place. Are these more useful than print? It's difficult to say because each learner learns in a different manner. But no doubt about it, the fact that online learning has greater outreach, it is more easily accessible to many persons. It gives you a direct learning experience. And if you record your sessions and if you are able to read them, you can have them at your time, at your place, you can reread them again. In addition to this, non-print has also the very different types of portability can be done. Of course, when you're talking about television, it is not so portable, but radio is extremely portable. When you have Wi-Fi, it is very easy to access. Similarly, learning through the various search engines, you are able to see that. And you also have control over such kind of mediums because you can hear them, see them, listen to them at your own pace and time. And therefore, whereas you may not have access or you may not have control over television because that is being delivered through a different agency, but other non-print media, you do have control of it and can see it and hear it as per your own times. So therefore, when we talk of non-print media, it is able to facilitate very many learning objectives, and it can also contribute to the development of learning through a 3D approach. Often learners say that they feel motivated when they are actually listening or seeing a teacher rather than printed material, because physically the teacher is actually talking to them, or like for instance, I am talking to you, in the same way you are talking to them, and therefore there is a greater involvement of learners through a non-print media. We have seen also that when online classes are held or when there is an interactive radio program going on, learners are able to directly ask their questions, which basically means that you are in real time, you are talking to your teacher. You are hearing the teacher and you can immediately either give feedback or you can ask your question, whether you use the chat box or you do a phone in. You are able to actually communicate better and faster, and therefore that all increases motivation, and it also makes learning more individualized, more personalized, and also motivates learners to be active participants in their own learning. In that sense, we see that there are many advantages both of print as well as non-print. It depends on how the learner wants to learn or how learning is going to take place in that sense for each learner. Each learner is an individual and must select the kind of medium so that their learning is most effective. As learners, you have a vast variety of educational media which is available for you, whether it is in the form of print or any kind of non-print. You have the freedom to choose your learning, but the end result must always be to enhance learning. I hope that you have learnt and enjoyed the session where we spoke about the philosophy of distance education, and we also talked about classification of different media based upon scholars and about the attributes which are there of educational media, and finally we have compared the merits and limitations of print and non-print media. I hope that this session will give you a better understanding of media and educational communication. Thank you very much.